Hey, welcome to Mikey's Video Game Madness. Today we're playing Ninja Gaiden Sigma 2, which is a PlayStation exclusive. I think it's also on the Vita. Not 100% sure about that, but when I was looking for thumbnails, I saw the Vita. I thought they only had the first Ninja Gaiden available on the PlayStation Vita, but they might have the second Ninja Gaiden Sigma as well. The Sigmas are the PlayStation exclusive versions. Sigma 1 was essentially a better looking version of the Xbox version with the playable character Rachel, which I can remember her name this time. Actually looked up some information before I actually did this video. Actually prepared a little bit, huh? How professional of me. Anyway, this version's a lot different than the original Xbox Ninja Gaiden 2. They took out a lot of the blood. They changed the graphics engine, which I personally think looks better. You don't fight as many enemies at one time, but they've raised the health. To me, it feels more balanced. I haven't played a whole lot of this game, and I haven't played a lot of the Xbox 360 version. I can't remember if I owned the 360 version, rented it, or whatever, but I feel like I've played it when I watched videos of it. Like, it just looks familiar with me. I think I might have rented it back in the day, because I feel like the graphics were a little bit foggier. But anyway, and it was because the resolution's actually at a native 720p. I know that sounds like nothing now with games running in native 4K. That's the big draw now. Although when the PlayStation 3 came out, the big deal was HDMI, and so everybody assumed that the games were going to run at 1080p. When 9 times out of 10, like the Xbox 360 version usually had better resolution. And it had a better upscaler too, and the way like it processed anti-aliasing looks a lot sharper than the PlayStation 3 in most cases, unless you play an exclusive like Uncharted or something like that. Those games look on point, but you really needed to know how to program it, and most developers would program for the 360 first and then port it over to the PlayStation 3. Later on, they started with the PlayStation 3 as the base system and then ported it over to the 360, which is why I personally think BioShock Infinite looks better on the PlayStation 3 versus the Xbox 360. But those games are fairly close, and really that's the way it should be. But when they actually did program a PlayStation exclusive, especially Naughty Dog and Insomniac, it looked like something that couldn't be replicated on the Xbox 360, which is really weird because then you go back and play multi-plat ports and it's like, it looks like the PlayStation 3 can't handle anything. But playing on a 4K television, I will say, going back and playing these PlayStation 3 games versus the Xbox 360 games, now that it's upscaled, PlayStation 3 games look noticeably a little bit fuzzier than the Xbox 360 versions. This game looks pretty sharp though, I will have to say. So they took some bosses out, added some bosses in, took some parts of the levels out. This is like a director's cut. There's also 3 additional playable characters on a separate mode where you play as the female ninjas.
They were minions of the Black Spider.
Ayani, Rachel, and then this other ninja from the Nintendo DS Ninja Gaiden game that I don't know anything about, so I can't think of her name.
Neither do I.
It's like Mamami or something, I don't know. I quickly glanced. I don't know if you could tell or not. So, when this game installs, it tells you the story, but this game was already installed when I put it in the system a long time ago. So, I have no idea what's going on story wise, but I feel like if you added a story to this game, it would be batshit crazy and probably wouldn't make much sense since you're fighting gigantic statues and spider soldiers and all this stuff. One thing they took out of this version is the gore. I felt like it was inappropriate, yet when you play as the ninjas that are female, there's an option to have their boobs jiggle with the 6-axis version controller. So I don't know, I don't understand the programmers' morals and where they draw the line of what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. Since they're otherworldly creatures, I don't really care that they have all this purple stuff going out of them. I think it kind of actually looks a little bit cool, and I think it fits. I personally like this version. If you go on forums and try to find out what version's better, people tend to like the Xbox 360 version, but there are people that like this version more. I have to say, I like this version. This is a very technical game. When you go back and play the God of War games, I haven't played the newest one that comes out that looks like a completely different type of game, but all the God of War is on PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, and then the PSP versions. Like, that action adventure game is like on point. Like, when you block, Kratos immediately blocks, or this game, you have to anticipate your animation finishing and then block and all this stuff, and you really have to strategically plan everything out. I guess that's more realistic in a very unrealistic environment. I don't even know when this game takes place. It like takes place in some weird future world looking thing, but I think it's supposed to take place now. It makes absolutely no sense, but it's really fun, and it just takes a while to get used to it. The camera in these games are like your worst enemy. One thing that they did change from Ninja Gaiden Sigma 2 that I really appreciate is that the camera actually moves in the direction that you push it. If you remember in the last video, it was reversed, and that was being a gigantic pain in my ass, but this time it's pretty cool. You can definitely tell they've taken out enemies in this game, as there's portions of this game that feel somewhat empty, but that's fine. There's still never really a dull moment. This is kind of annoying when you look at these treasure boxes. This wasn't in the 360 version. There's like a loading time. I'm saying a lot to buy myself some time to talk. Obviously, I was naturally born to talk on YouTube. I don't know if you could tell or not. But anyway, yeah, update on the medicine. I haven't been taking it. I had some bad side effects, which I think I mentioned. I think that they're going to try to get me to put it back on it, but I don't know if I could deal with it. There's just too much going on, and I don't know where you guys are, but like, if you don't have insurance, like, the medicine's like $400 like out of pocket. So like, if my insurance company decides to drop it, like, I would have to stop like cold turkey, because there's no way that I could afford a $400 prescription. It's just ridiculous with the pharmaceuticals, and there's like no generic version. So I'm really at a crossroads with that, but that's all I'll say about that. I don't want to get too personal, but I know I left the video on kind of like a hiatus. I mentioned it, so it's my fault. So I guess I had to finish it. So I don't know what's going on with that, but yeah, there's like a risk reward kind of thing with medication, that sometimes it makes you like sick, but the reward is you don't feel as bad, but sometimes being sick makes you feel bad. So I mean, what's the point of that? So there's a lot going on, and then I have like some GI stuff going on, but I think it's possibly stress related. And that's what they're telling me. Keep on going to the doctors for pain. They keep on like just telling me it's all in my head, and it's just because I need to chill out. So for all you people that are suffering from stress and anxiety or depression and all that shit, and you get humiliated or put down by people that don't understand it, there are other people out there, and it does affect you physically, so you shouldn't feel guilty about that. Despite people aren't gonna, the average person is super selfish, closed-minded, and lacks imagination and empathy, where they can't just imagine what it'd be like in that situation. They have to actually experience that situation for them to be able to relate, and they think a lot of times it's a choice, and sometimes it is a choice, but sometimes it's automatic, where you don't feel good and you don't necessarily have a reason for it, and they don't understand that. And a lot of times people are assholes about it. This ninja power thing, it's kind of weird how you have to aim it. It throws me off a little bit. But yeah, it's pretty fun. Although I will say that the enemy's health being raised higher does drag out the fights a little bit longer, and it makes your sword feel like it's kind of shittier than it actually is. Like, it's kind of like, it reminds me like when you played like these Star Wars brawler games and you had a lightsaber, which is supposed to cut through just about anything, and you would like hack and slash things and enemies like 500 different times, and it was just like you hitting them with like a wooden rod or whatever, and it just never felt powerful. But I guess at the same time, like, the game would be way too easy if that was the case. But the sword was originally programmed to be more powerful, but at the same time you'd be fighting more enemies. The Xbox 360 suffered from a lot of frame rate issues because they threw so many enemies at you, and this game has better shaders and it runs at a higher resolution, so there's things that they raised to make up for that, and I think overall it works better. But some people miss the massive amount of enemies and all the dismemberment and all the blood and everything like that. There's a little bit of blood. I don't know why this game got rated mature, to be honest with you. I guess maybe because of the boob jiggle. I just remember the boob jiggle. I didn't show you the boob jiggle on this video, so if you're anxiously drooling, like waiting for the boob jiggle to show, I'm sorry to disappoint you. There will be no boob jiggling in this video. But yeah, like right here, it does feel sort of empty. And again, we have to wait for this to finish loading. Like, even though it says push X to proceed, I promise you I pushed it immediately, and it just took a while to go away. But yeah, like, sometimes I'm reluctant to talk about depression and mental illness and stuff like that, but now that I'm getting more comfortable with just making my own channel, knowing that only I and maybe a handful of other people on a good day will actually see it, I'm just going to be more honest about things. So I know there's people that try to advocate for like mental illness, depression, anxiety, and stuff like that, but there's like a fine line. Like, I try not to make a big deal out of it because there's a fine line of accepting things and understanding things and trying to make it better, or trying to work with it to make your life better. And then I feel like some people embrace it and let them define them, and then they like never allow themselves the potential to improve, and that's where you got to be careful. You don't want to settle, you always want to better yourself, and you want to do that with everything, like you don't want to stop reading, you don't ever want to stop learning, you always want to figure out things and get better at stuff. You just don't want, I mean, you might as well just curl up and die at that point if you just give up on everything. So you always want to make it better, and you don't want something as tragic as mental illness of any type, or depression. Because mental illness, I'm not trying to make it sound like somebody belongs in like a psych ward or anything, but anything to do with that, you don't want that to define you. It's something you want to work on and like adapt, I guess is the best way to put it, because I guess it doesn't fully go away unless you get the miracle drugs. But the way drugs works is that you eventually build tolerance. I mean, some people are on drugs for the rest of your life, but I mean, the ultimate goal, like if you can do it, is to be drug free, and be able to cope on your own. I know that's not realistic, and that's definitely something you want to talk to your doctors and stuff about. But that's another thing you want to look at. This crazy shit. I don't even understand what's going on. This is like Japan, and there's like pagodas on top of the buildings. It's just batshit crazy. I don't even know, unless that's an actual thing. I've never been to Japan before, but I did play a lot of Shenmue and Yakuza, so there's that. So based on Shenmue and Yakuza, I don't remember the buildings looking like that. A lot of cherry blossoms. We get cherry blossoms here, and all they do is remind me of allergies. But anyway, as I was saying, like, you want a good doctor, because sometimes like doctors push drugs because they get like deals and shit like that. So you really want to use your discretion, and if you feel like you don't have good discretion, as bad as your discretion is, hopefully you have enough decent discretion to have somebody that can help you make better choices and stuff like that. But it's nothing to be ashamed of or anything like that. It's just something you gotta work on, and it's definitely don't ever just accept anything the doctor just hands you. Question everything, research everything. It's all about self-discovery. You don't want to wake up one day and like be on drugs for a long time and try to wonder like if that's you or not. Or are the drugs making you feel this way? Is this like a synthetic impression of who I really am? It's almost like a philosophical thing, but yeah. I remember I was younger, that's one of the things that made me want to definitely get off of like drugs and stuff like that, because I woke up one day and I started to question. I was like, is this even me? And for a long time I was able to function without any issues, and hopefully I can get back to that point. I would really much like that, but right now I'm just trying to work on what's the best plan. But that's as far as that'll go. I'm supposed to be talking about this game, but I played this game longer than I thought I would. And it's an action game, so there's not much to say. I'm sure you already saw the little, I don't know what you'd call it, like the little tutorial message that when you dismember somebody, if you push the heavy attack, it'll do a finishing move. And I'm guessing all that glowing stuff that's coming out of them was originally blood on the Xbox 360 version. But even though this is like it's censored and changed in all this way, they actually took into account a lot of the complaints and stuff from the first game and tried to make it better. The original creator was not involved. I believe he got in some sexual harassment suit or something like that, and ended up having to leave. I forgot what he worked on after that, but I don't think it did all that well. And Dead or Alive 5 came out, and I thought it was pretty good. Ninja Gaiden 3 wasn't well received, and then they came out with Ninja Gaiden 3 Razor's Edge, which has nothing to do with that Bill Murray movie that came out before Ghostbusters that was super serious. He was like a monk or something. I think it was called Razor's Edge. I remember one time randomly came on TV, and it was before like Lost in Translation and all his serious roles. By the way, I love the film Lost in Translation. If you haven't seen that, I definitely recommend it since we're playing a Japanese theme game. I feel like that movie's more of an experience than just watching a film. I definitely need to upgrade that to Blu-ray though. Talking about upgrading to Blu-ray, I went to Best Buy to look today, and like all these older movies are on like the 4K Ultra HD like Blu-ray discs, and like all the older movies are starting to come out on it. That's one good thing about new format to me personally, is that older movies start to come out again. I'm not a huge fan of most contemporary movies. So like my favorite movies from the late 70s, the 80s, and maybe the early 90s, like come out again. So that's pretty exciting, at least to me, because most of the movies on Blu-ray, all the old movies have pretty much been released to it, except, even though I guess it's kind of labeled as like a chick flick or whatever, but I really enjoy it because it's like one of the Brat Pack movies. They never released, and I like it a lot. I'm not gonna lie, it's like one of my favorite movies. I used to come on like Fox when I was a kid, which was like a UHF channel, and they didn't have a lot of money, so they ended up showing less popular movies over and over again, and Pretty in Pink is one of the ones that came on a lot, so it's nostalgic to me. That never came out on Blu-ray. They have every other stinking Brat Pack movie, and I have most of them, like The Breakfast Club, Weird Science, 16 Candles. I don't have St. Elmo's Fire, and I don't have The Outsiders. Probably need to keep an eye out for those, but yeah, I have most of those films on Blu-ray, but yeah, for whatever reason, Pretty in Pink. They even had a theatrical re-release last year, and still no Pretty in Pink Blu-ray. So disappointing. But yeah, I definitely need to get Lost in Translation on Blu-ray. I love that movie so much. I would like watch that movie and zone out, and just the way that it's filmed. And Sofia Coppola, which is actually the daughter of Francis Ford Coppola, who directed Apocalypse Now and the Godfather movies, and ironically Jack with Robin Williams, which is super random. But yeah, his daughter is a pretty good director. She directed that, and she directed The Virgin Suicides, which I also have on DVD, and Marie Antoinette, which I don't have, but that was kind of a cool take on the story. It was interesting. She just has a unique way of directing it where you almost feel like you're in the scenery instead of like watching a movie. It feels like you're kind of in the room watching. I don't know what she does to make it feel that way, but she's really good. She also directed A Very Merry Christmas, but in my opinion, that was the most terrible Christmas special I've ever seen in quite some time. So I definitely skipped that. Like Harold and Kumar 3 or whatever the hell it's called, the Christmas Harold and Kumar looks like an Academy Award nominee compared to Very Merry Christmas, and they spent a lot of money on that. I don't know if it's on Netflix overseas or whatever, but that was like a Netflix exclusive. It's so bad. Like, Bill Murray's just been so used to doing his serious roles. I feel like he's kind of lost some of his comedic touches. And I just feel like when people get older, like, their tastes change, including mine. So maybe my tastes have just changed. But like if you watch like directors as they get older, or like actors and stuff, like what they think is funny changes, and the whole theme of everything changes. I haven't talked about the game in quite some time that's playing right now, but if you're used to watching my channel, 9 times out of 10 you'll realize that I don't talk about the game. Because you can just watch it and you can just play it on your own. I want to show you it, but I don't want to take anything from you. And it'd be pretty stupid of me and be like, look, he's slashing, and like telling you a play-by-play like I'm a sports broadcaster telling you what's going on the screen at the same time. Plus, I played this game for 30 minutes. Like, what can you say about an action game? It controls well, blocking's delayed but functional. It makes it more strategic. The graphics look really nice. I like the glowing effect of the cherry blossoms. It sort of makes me want to sneeze a little bit because of my allergies, but I'm trying to hold it in because it's kind of gross when people are burping and sneezing and blowing their nose into the microphone. I try to be self-aware of that. There's other YouTubers that do such things. I won't call anybody out, but I'm sure you've seen a few, and it's kind of gross, especially when they have really good equipment that picks up everything. Lucky for me, I don't have the highest quality shit, so hopefully some of that stuff gets lost in translation. Because I was talking about the movie Lost in Translation. Actually, that wasn't on purpose. I don't even know where I'm going with that. See, since I'm getting older, my humor's starting to suck like a dad or an uncle joke. That'd be funny to other people my age, or you just get the pity chuckle. Dude's pretty into himself, where when you buy from him, he has to have like his own little statue going on. Pretty much loaded up on all this stuff. One thing that I'm still early in the game, but it seems like whenever I'm close to death, my health kind of recharges on its own by killing enemies. It seems like the game gives you what you need when you need it. But it just seems more thought out, and the additional characters are nice. And it does look, in my opinion, a lot better. I do think that this runs at, I know this runs at 30 frames per second, but if I remember correctly, the Xbox 360 Ninja Gaiden 2 runs at 60. I'm tempted to buy it, although I don't think I can record at 60 frames per second, so it wouldn't make much difference to you. And I think this is a good game, but it's not my all-time favorite game where I feel like I need 2 versions of it. So I think I'm going to stick with Sigma unless I change my mind. If I do, I'll definitely record the original Xbox 360 version, if that comes to pass or whatever. But I'm pretty happy with this version. And I feel like after I finish this version, I'm probably going to be Ninja Gaiden 2'd out. So yeah, I think I'll be pretty much done with this. The levels are really long. That's why this video is so long, is that I kept on playing because I didn't know when was a good place to stop the video. Definitely right here feels like an area that more enemies would have been there and they just took some out. But you know, it works for me. I'm not one of those people who like to play. I have a couple of them too. I think I have Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 3. Then I have Demon Souls. And then I have Bloodborne. I don't know why I keep on getting the games thinking I'm gonna like them. I haven't even played Dark Souls 3. I got it like super cheap from a red box. I thought it'd be interesting, but those games have been played to death now. Now nobody cares. And now that I think it's Dark Souls 1. I don't think it's Demon Souls. Demon Souls was the PlayStation exclusive one. Now that the remastered version's coming out, I think everybody's going to be focused on that. I think that's everybody's favorite one. Like Dark Souls 2 was semi-popular, but a lot of people seem disappointed with that. And then I didn't hear much at all about Dark Souls 3. Everything was all about Bloodborne, it seemed like. which I also have. I don't think I ever did a video on that, but I'm terrible at it. But I do like the art direction. Everything's great. I would love a Castlevania game with that style, but not with the difficulty. Like, maybe... I always felt like God of War, the PlayStation 3 versions, like I said, the new one comes out Friday, so I can't comment on how that plays. But I always felt like the way God of War 1 through 3 and Ascension and the PSP ones always played like how Castlevania should have played. And then they came out with a 3D Castlevania that played like God of War, but they completely like rebooted it and changed the storyline, and the fantasy theme was more Lord of the Rings than it was like the gothic horror that Castlevania was, so it didn't seem right. It seemed like something more like Shadow of Mordor or something like that, except Shadow of Mordor is like an open world game where this was more linear. And then Castlevania 2 came out, which actually took place in contemporary times. Like, I played all the way through the first Castlevania, first 3D Castlevania on PlayStation 3, and it was a good game on its own, but it didn't feel anything like a Castlevania game. And they also took out like all the familiar tunes, like, and like it's like gothic music, but with a rock and roll synthesizer like flair to it. Almost, it still has like 80s and 90s cues to it. There's like no catchy tunes. It's like everything's like played on a organ or just orchestrated, and just everything felt wrong. And then the story, I don't want to spoil it just in case you want to play it, but they didn't leave much for future titles, and they screwed up the whole legacy of the storyline, even though it was a reboot. But Part 2's premise is interesting, I will say that, but it definitely wasn't even as engaging as the first one. It just should have been a different game, if you ask me. But I did like the first 3D Castlevania. That's another 3D game. I wish these games kind of took some cues from God of War and Castlevania. This one came out, I believe, before Castlevania, but God of War was definitely out. But I guess they wanted to feel like they did their own thing. But God of War just had the best camera and the responsiveness for the blocking that just worked better, in my opinion. But anyway, that's the end of the video. I hope it was somewhat at least interesting. I know it wasn't the most entertaining video, but at least I'll look back on it and be entertained in some form or another, even if it's just based on nostalgia. It's like, hey, I remember the day I did that. But anyway, for all you watching, thank you so much for supporting the channel, and I hope you're all doing well. Take care. Bye.
If you want to, like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.